What if the entire universe was built from just a single divine particle? And what if our brains aren't creating consciousness, but are actually just radio receivers for a universal awareness? Okay, let's dive right in, because we're going to explore a really fascinating and frankly provocative theory from author Ivan Antic. He's trying to connect the dots between fundamental physics and the very nature of what it means to be aware. You know, it all starts with what might be the biggest mystery of all. We use our consciousness to figure everything else out, right? From galaxies billions of light years away to the tiniest subatomic particles. But what is consciousness itself? It's a question that, according to our source, science really hasn't managed to nail down. And this leads us to what the author calls a paradox. See, science is fantastic at studying the effects of consciousness. You know, how we see, how we remember, how our brains process things. But when you ask what the essence of awareness actually is, well, we're mostly met with silence. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The author claims this confusion isn't an accident. He argues that our universities are actually teaching two completely different and totally conflicting stories about what reality is. So, what's this conflict he's talking about? Well, on one side, you have the story of random chance and evolution. But on the other side, that same science is telling us about a deeply interconnected, non-physical quantum world. How do those two things fit together? The way the author lays it out, the first story is one of pure randomness. You've got the Big Bang, particles just bumping into each other by pure chance to create life, and then this long, accidental evolutionary journey from a single cell all the way up to us. But then, he says, you go down the hall in that same university and you learn about quantum physics, which says the universe isn't solid at all. Instead, it's this universal, interconnected field of energy and information. And here's the author's radical leap. He says this field isn't just energy, it's consciousness itself. To really drive home just how improbable he thinks that random creation story is, the author uses this incredible analogy. He's referencing calculations that suggest the universe just isn't old enough for something as insanely complex as a DNA strand to have formed purely by chance. So from this massive contradiction, the author draws a pretty bold conclusion. He speculates that it's almost as if there are two different sciences being taught, a simplified mainstream version for all of us, and a much deeper, more fundamental understanding of reality that's kept for a select few. So if reality isn't just a random accident, then what is it? Well, this brings us to the author's alternative model, and his answer starts with the very fabric of the universe itself. The foundation for his whole idea is the quantum field, but he defines it as more than just energy. For him, it's a universal, conscious field of pure potential. It's this unmanifested realm, kind of outside of our normal space and time, that holds the information for everything that ever was, is, or could be. And here's the absolute core of the theory. The author suggests that this entire quantum field, and by extension, all of reality, is generated by the vibration of one single non-physical particle. He calls it the divine particle. And get this, it's moving so unbelievably fast, infinitely faster than light, that it seems to be everywhere at once. He gives this brilliant little analogy to help us wrap our heads around it. Just imagine spinning a tiny flashlight in the dark, so fast that you don't see the point of light anymore. You see a solid circle. The author is suggesting that our entire complex universe is a similar illusion, created by the impossibly fast movement of that one single particle. To explain this, he proposes that reality basically has two layers, and the dividing line is the speed of light. Everything we can see and touch, the entire physical world, is made of vibrations slower than light. He calls these Hertzian waves. But the source of it all, that invisible quantum field, is made from vibrations that are faster than light, what he calls non-Hertzian or scalar waves. So if consciousness is universal, what's the deal with our brains? Well, the author uses a great analogy for this. The brain isn't the source of consciousness, it's a receiver. Think about it. A radio doesn't create the music it plays, it just tunes into a broadcast that's already in the air. He suggests our brain does the exact same thing, tuning into the universal consciousness from that quantum field. Now, this model has some absolutely huge implications. I mean, if we're just receivers tuning into a field of infinite possibilities, does that mean we can change the channel? According to the author, yes, absolutely. The theory suggests that every single possible reality you can imagine, every different choice, every different outcome, already exists.
right here, right now. They're all running simultaneously, in parallel, like different radio stations broadcasting at the same time.
So, what decides which of these infinite realities we tune into? The author claims it all comes down to our own internal state. The frequency we're on is determined by where we put our conscious focus, what our deepest core beliefs are, and how strong our convictions are about what's real. He even outlines a kind of 3-step process for how this shift happens. First, you have to genuinely change your internal world, your way of thinking, your state of being. Then, as you hold that new state, the people and circumstances from your old reality just naturally start to fade away. And finally, a new parallel reality that's a perfect match for your new frequency seamlessly materializes around you. And this is the absolute key takeaway here. You're not actually changing the physical world or forcing matter to bend to your will. You're changing yourself, your internal frequency. And that shift just tunes you into a different, pre-existing reality that was always there waiting for you. But this brings up a massive question, right? If we can shift between realities, what's the ultimate point of this whole cosmic game? Is it just to create our own perfect little world? The author's answer is probably not what you're expecting. He says the point of all our struggles, all our triumphs, this whole human drama, it's not to manipulate our environment or even to find some perfect reality. So what is it then? He claims the entire universe exists for one reason and one reason only, for that universal consciousness to know itself. And we, human beings, we are the vehicle for that self-knowledge. Our whole purpose, he states, is just to know ourselves. When you look at it from this perspective, every single life, the banker, the artist, the scientist, the saint, is equally important. Each one is just a unique angle, a different way for the universal consciousness to experience another facet of its own infinite potential. And that brings us to the ultimate takeaway from this whole theory. The journey isn't about fixing the world out there. It's about exploring the universe in here. Because by understanding ourselves, we're actually understanding the very consciousness that creates everything. Which leaves us with one final, very powerful question to think about. If this model holds any truth, and your reality is a direct reflection of your internal state, then what you experience isn't a random event, it's a choice. So, what will you choose to know about yourself?